Well, I want to thank you all for joining me today live from my drum room. And I want to welcome my guest, who's a very dear and old friend, the great Eddie Tuduri. There you are.
Hey, man.
Hey, buddy. Good to see you.
You too, man. Thank you. Thank you.
I,
Thank you for having
I,
me.
my pleasure, man. It's a Eddie. It's a pleasure. It's an honor, and thank you for saying all those nice things earlier. And
By the way, you can start now.
yes, everybody watching, if you don't know, Eddie is the famous who watches all these shows, and oftentimes he's, you know, running a little late, and he'll say to me, "You can start now." So I appreciate that. It's great to see you. Welcome home. I know you were in Nashville. How long were you in Nashville for?
Just 7 days, like
Yeah,
Monday through Monday.
yeah,
Uh, I love it there. I lived there for a little while. It wasn't my cup of tea in that respect. I'm a Yankee after all,
yeah,
and but I love the people there.
yeah,
I
yeah.
uh, I worked there originally with Dobie Gray back in the early '70s.
Oh man,
And I
love him.
met Danny Flowers and Chris Lusinger, who are two of my most favorite people. They're just amazing, and we're still friends. We were in that band together all the way back. I think it was '72 and three, maybe,
Wow.
and we're still very close. We keep in touch. Chris plays on every. He's a studio player, but he works with Garth Brooks.
Yeah, I
Uh,
know the name for sure. Yeah,
and Danny Flowers wrote Tulsa Time and uh, I was a burden, a whole lot of gospel-y, like, in fact, we went to his church on Sunday where he and his wife, Mabel, plays B3 and pedals. And a drummer, oh my God, Kyra, she was so funky. I was like dumbfounded the whole time. And of course, Danny. And I had Sean Murphy, great, one of my favorite singers in the world, and Chris and his wife. So every day was a real I wasn't surprised, but I was surrounded by such love and friends from years. You know what it's like when you get with you've been friends with somebody for 40 or 50 years.
yeah, yeah.
So it was wonderful.
That's
Um,
great.
you know, so that and everybody else. I mean, the Pearl Company, of course. Pearl is my partner in the trap program. They do so much for me. I don't even know where to begin. You know, marketing and shipping, receiving, export, import, about everything.
That's great.
Whenever I need anything, I make a phone call and it's there.
And
So,
great, great company, great people.
mm,
Know a lot of the folks there. Yeah, excellent. And you've been with Pearl like a long time, right? I mean, you've
yeah,
been
30 years, something like 30 years or
yeah,
something.
yeah.
They've
I th-
been, well, I was with them as an endorsee. And then, and then when I got hurt, I tried getting a couple of other companies involved because I needed, even though it's not a drum program, we needed the drum for the tactile component of the learning curve. I'll explain a little more later, but
sure. Yeah,
I, the other companies were, well, how many drums can you sell? So, well, maybe none. I
yeah.
don't know. I mean, this is a charity. I'm not looking at it in that respect, you know. So a couple of people fell out. And when I approached Pearl at a NAMM show, I said, I need help. They said, why didn't you come to us? What do you want? They flew me there. We made all these, and the arrangement has not changed one iota, except it's getting better and better and better.
That's great, man.
I mean, Raymond Massey, have you seen Raymond? I'm sure you've seen Raymond play.
Yeah, I saw him play with Tanya Tucker. In fact, I'll just
Oh,
say
wow.
I saw Raymond at PASIC back in November last month, and I
Oh, yeah.
hadn't seen him in a while, and maybe he's even watching today. And I hadn't seen him, and gave each
Oh,
other a big hug. I signed him as an endorser back in the '90s.
okay.
And, yeah, and then he invited, and I said to him, we were talking about this too. It's funny you say that, Eddie. I said, am I remembering correctly, Raymond, that I knew he was a great player, and I said you came through town with Tanya Tucker. Were you? And he said, Yeah, man. He's like the most laid back. Yeah, man. That's right. You remember that? Yeah, I remember. Anyway, he's a monster drummer.
I mean,
Monster drummer.
where else does Dennis Chambers go for drum lessons?
Yeah, yeah.
Honest to God, Dennis comes in there, sit down, Raymond, play that.
Uh,
And he said, I asked him about that. I was teasing him the other day, and he said, yeah, he said he calls me from all over the world.
yeah,
They're connected.
that's great. Wow.
Yeah. And then Glenn Karuba is on the road with Rodney Crowell now. But that's the thing about Pearl. They let you go.
Yeah,
Go out in the world, be the person you are, and while you're committed to us at the same time. But they don't stifle anyone from their careers or their playing. I mean, Raymond can go do anything. He plays. I remember he was playing 3-4 nights a week and then going to work.
yeah.
You can do that when you're younger.
Exactly. Yeah, you can.
Now
That's a young
I
man's
only
game.
take gigs from 4 in the afternoon till 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, Dave Grillo, thank you for saying that. One of our longtime viewers is saying he loves the podcast. Keep him coming. Merry Christmas and rest in peace, Dino Danelli. Which you probably heard about Dino, or maybe you
No.
hadn't. Yeah, Dino passed away. It was announced yesterday. So
Oh,
yeah. I
he
know.
was the biggest influence.
Yeah,
Uh, uh, I
yeah,
mean, back in the day, that's where I'm from.
yeah,
And there were a lot of bands around in those days, but nobody played like the Rascals. I mean, we had the Vagrants, or Leslie West and Mountain, and they turned in, and the
yeah.
Pigeons, who were the Vanilla Fudge, and we had great New York bands, just unbelievable guys, great players, but nobody played like Dino. He was.
No,
I used to watch him and go, "That's on. I'll never get there." I was very
but
young.
no, but I agree. I mean, I came up. I started playing. I was aware of the Rascals in the '60s. I was born in '60, so I'd see him on the Ed Sullivan Show, and then when I started playing in the early '70s, their music was still as fresh as ever. And I always looked at him, Eddie, like he was the American Ringo, and that he had the same effect, that Ringo had on so many drummers.
Maybe,
You know,
yeah. I
I
mean,
mean,
he
just yeah,
certainly did. And Ringo, there's nobody like Ringo, and then there really wasn't anybody like him. So in that
yeah,
respect, they really were icons.
and
I don't know
yeah.
if anybody turned more drummers on than Ringo did.
No, I don't think so. I agree. I don't think anybody did, but Dino,
You
like you
were
said,
born
that
in the 60s?
I was born in 1960. Yeah, 60.
I have
Yeah.
socks older than you.
See, I knew it was going to be this. I knew it would be mostly this.
Well,
We
I
will.
hope so.
Oh my God! But
What
man,
is drumming? The best drummers are comedians. I mean, Wilfredo Reyes Jr.,
yeah, yeah,
he could get up on stage. I love his playing. I mean, I just love it. But if he never played a note, he could make me laugh for a half an hour. And Vinny,
oh my
he's a
gosh,
pretty good. I mean, you put him on stage and he takes off. He's pretty
yeah.
good. With
He's
all
oh
these
man.
stand-up comedians, forget about the drums.
There are a lot of. You're right. I mean, Stan Lynch is one of the funniest guys I know. I mean, Stan is just he'll just kind of like Vinny. He'll just do like a monologue. He'll just go off and
Right, right.
hilarious. I spoke with Gad yesterday, and it was 5 straight minutes of jokes of him,
Oh,
one after another, just one after another. And my wife's standing there. We actually, Kelly, we had to go out, and she's just like shaking her head because I'm on the phone, holding my phone, just going,
oh yeah.
you know. Anyway, but yeah, rest easy,
That's
Dino.
the thing, the
Yeah,
camaraderie, the camaraderie and respect we have for each other beyond the drum set.
yeah,
You know, uh, I respect so many players for the people they are. When
yeah,
you
yeah,
look at their playing, I mean, all the fellas that we know and the girls, you know, I just heard I told you, a fatback drummer at church the other day. She knocked me out. We're friends on Facebook now. I'm sending her stuff. She's incredible.
Great.
But uh, the point is, you know, most of these guys and gals they're wonderful people.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
incredible people. If they never played a note, I'd still want to be their best friend. You
Yeah.
know,
That's beautiful. Yep. I know exactly what you mean, and you're known in the industry and in the drum community as being that kind of guy too. That you're a friend to everybody. And I want to get into trapping a little bit. We'll talk about that and how that came to be. But
sure.
I just want to, I want everybody watching too to know, about your incredible career as a drummer too, and
Yeah, I never talk since I got hurt. I never talk about that. But I've worked a lot.
I know. Yeah.
You know, over the years. We all have to. I mean, there was a guy at the airport the other day and asked me, "Well, what kind of music do you play?" And I said, "Man, I made a living playing drums my whole life." I said, "So, I mean, I would play polkas if I had to pay the rent,
Yeah.
and with all my heart and soul, I would play a polka, you know, because you can't really if you not everybody is Steve or Vinny or those cats who
Yeah.
don't have to be on the phone every 5 minutes for a gig.
And don't have to play polkas all the
Don't
time.
have to play polkas, yeah. I'm sure they played a couple, but so yeah, it's a matter of being open and playing anything you're asked to play. It was difficult for me coming from where I'm from. I know 3 beats. I've known 3 beats my whole life, and I paid the rent.
Yeah. Yep.
So I mean,
That's
that means a lot. I mean,
yeah.
that's saying a mouthful. If you're a musician, you can. People say, "Who'd you play with?" I said, "I paid the rent for my whole life."
Yeah. And you know what? And I was just going to say, I think what you said is so important too. That I mean, I know you're being a little humble by saying you only play 3 beats, but the point of it is the simplicity of just being a solid drummer. And I know that's what you were known for. That's why you got hired to play with Dwight Yoakam and the Beach Boys and Dobie Gray. And you don't get those calls if you can't lay it down and just make it feel great, make the guys in the band feel great, be a great guy to hang out with on the bus. All those elements of what it takes to be successful.
Yeah, I agree. I know a lot of guys who have made. Jack Bruno. I
Yeah.
mean, Jack, we were talking about Jack the other day. Look at all those years, and
Yeah.
how do you stay in the same band all those years? Not just because you're a great player,
Right.
right? I mean, he can't make meatballs, but
but he knows you.
he has
So,
other attributes.
oh man. Yeah. No, no, you're right though. Jack is like one of those guys that's just such a great human. I mean, what a phenomenal player.
Yeah,
But and he said that the other day too. That he's again another humble guy, obviously, and he was saying that Tina really liked him and was comfortable with him. But I got to think, besides the whole package of who he was as a person had something to do with that as well. That he was just the kind of guy you want to have on the bus, or in Tina's case, the plane.
dependable. I would imagine he's probably the most dependable guy on the road. I
Yeah.
would imagine. But yeah, I mean, when you first said you were going to have him on, the only word that really identifies is perfect. He plays perfectly.
Yeah.
He doesn't overplay. He plays the pocket. When he embellishes, it's just perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I always feel like I'm tripping over my feet when I play a fill out of context or something. Jack was one of those guys. He was just, I never heard him. I've worked with Chris Pinnick, a guitar player, for 50 years.
Yeah.
Chris is amazing. and he's never played a bad note. I don't know how that's possible. He plays really fast, and he's a very intelligent player. He never hits a bad note. It really pisses me off. You know,
Hate those
guys
guys.
like that.
Damn.
Yeah, Vinny's like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no
Anyway,
surprise, Eddie. We have a lot of our friends watching today, and a couple of really great comments, which you can see later. But uh,
I was thinking 3 or 4 people would show up anyway.
Jake Jacobs says, "Great to see the two of you hanging. Eddie, your
Oh.
polka was questionable. Love you, pal." Uh, oh, that's too funny. And Bill Donnelly says, "Eddie is all love and no bullshit." Amen. Yeah,
Oh,
I'll
geez.
second that.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah.
Yeah. So my recollection of us meeting was
Sorry, I led you away from the playing thing. Go
no,
ahead.
no, that's okay. No, I was just gonna say when I met you, um, I think you were playing with Dwight Yoakam. It was in the '80s.
Yeah,
I was living in LA. We were introduced by Tim Smith, our
Tim
mutual
Smith show.
friend. Yeah, and
Yeah,
you were doing rimshot drumsticks. You had just started, running the operation in the States. And
that was a departure, but it was I really enjoyed my years with the various companies.
yeah,
It was
yeah,
a whole new ball game. You knew very well. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
That was
Dwight. I had been in Canada for 4 years. I traveled around, lived in Europe, lived in other cities and states, and I was in Canada where I honestly think some of the best musicians in the world are just on every corner, it seems. Everywhere I went, I saw guys that were just stupendous
mm,
uh, on every instrument, vocalist, everybody. And I was there uh, playing with a band called the Lincolns, Danny Weiss on guitar, Michael Farah on keyboards. There was a guy named Prakash, and Steve Ambrose was the lead singer, and Earl Seymour was on sax. So those guys don't ring a bell because here in the States or elsewhere, nobody knows who they are. But there, like there was a band called the Downchild Blues Band.
hmm
They've been around for 50 years. They are the inspiration for the Blues Brothers. In fact, Aykroyd still sits in with them.
no
And
kidding. Okay.
yeah, the first Blues Brothers album, you'll see Donnie Walsh wrote 2 of the songs on that first album.
Yeah.
I remember
Okay.
he got a check and bought a yacht, so I remember that
Yeah.
very well. Anyway, I had left town for 4 years, and when I came back, I went to Josephina's, which was the best hang in
That was
town.
a great spot, man. Yeah.
And Dwight came walking out as I was walking in, and we had played together, not a lot, but enough uh, back, 5 or 6 years prior. And we worked in little honky tonks. He'd come by and pick me up in his Chevy, and we'd play for $25 or $40 and play mostly kind of bluegrass with drums. He's so talented.
Yeah. Yeah.
His music is it's exemplary in that field. And Pete Anderson and the drummer took him to a whole other place, an entirely different place. They took the bluegrass stuff and made rockabilly out of it, and he became famous. He
Yeah.
said, "You won't believe what happened to me. I've been on Johnny Carson. I sold 1 million records." I hugged him. I said, "That's wow." You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and maybe 6 months later or sometime later, after Rimshot was up and running, I get a call from him. And he said, "Would you come on and do a tour?" I said, "Sure. If I can invite some players and stores and people, some merchant people, it'd be great. I'll take some promo with me. We're going to be in 52 cities on your dime.
Yeah.
I take advantage of that." He said, "Yeah, sure, Eddie." You know, and so that's how that came together. Uh, I I'm the first to admit I'm not a country drummer. Uh, people I've took a lot of country gigs. I mean, it was
hmm
from Charlie Rich and Freddie Fender to Rick Nelson and the Stone Canyon Band to Dwight. All of them were country. I even did a show in Vegas called Country Fever. But people hire me because I swing everything. James Gatson is like one of my idols, right? So
Oh
everything
man.
I play sort of came between him and Bernard, maybe, you know.
Yeah.
And so these country guys would say, "Man, I love the way you play that," and because I couldn't play the simple boom chick, which is a real art
Yeah.
form. I tried to learn it,
Yeah.
but so I would get these jobs, a lot of jobs. I don't know why, because I sucked at country. After a month or so, people would say, Eddie, can you kind of play that song more like the record? And I said, no. But with all due respect, I'm not, I can't do that. I told you,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know. So you liked because it felt different, but then country fans, you don't play the fill where it belongs in the right place, and it doesn't feel right to them. They'll let you know. And they were, like,
Yeah.
what's that? What's that fat back shit?
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't do that in country. So I would leave, and then somebody else. I had to work. We all had to work. I never said no. So I did a lot of Freddie Fender was incredible. I loved him. I knew him from back when I was with Rick Nelson. Real fun guy. He rocked. I mean, he
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
rocked as a person and as a performer. Probably one of my most memorable, fun gigs, and it was short lived. I don't know, a few months. Anyway,
But man, and I want to ask this question before it. Brian Wilson is asking, not that Brian Wilson, another Brian Wilson,
all right.
uh, was asking, was J.D. Foster in Dwight's band then?
No,
No. Okay. Thanks,
no.
Eddie, and thanks for the question, Brian. And I know
Yeah.
there's some others. I'll try to get to these other questions, but and I also remember too. I'm thinking about this while we're talking, Eddie. One of our both of our dearest friends, Marty Farah.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
Marty and I worked together. I met him when I moved to LA in '85, working at
Uh-huh.
Simmons, and Marty used to talk about you. So I knew who you were. I certainly knew who you were when I met you in around '87 or '88, and and I remember you being at that time. You were like one of the guys on the scene, and Vinny used to
I was lucky.
Vinny,
I had a lot of
yeah,
gigs.
yeah.
I worked all the time.
Vinny used to refer to you as my friend Eddie Tuduri. He'd
Yeah.
say, I was talking to my friend Eddie Tuduri, and he was telling me he sometimes gets the same pain in his shoulder that I get, or
Oh,
whatever.
yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, point to all that is you've always been beloved by all these guys. So
Both of those guys, Vinny and Marty. Marty on even well, not on a larger scale. Marty played with me. Well, I had an organization called Musicians for UNICEF,
right,
and we did 7 years benefits twice a year. But over 300 musicians participated in LA. It was great. It was a great thing. I can't even begin to tell you who played. From everybody played. Everybody I knew played in that at
yeah,
one time or another. Marty played double drummers with me every show. And then we had a band called Thunder Up, where we had two drummers, Jerry Watts on bass, Sean Murphy sang, and oh God, Danny Grenier. It
yeah,
was always two drummers with Marty and I. And Marty, we were different drummers, but the pocket was perfect.
yeah,
Ricky Fattar, when I took the job with the Beach Boys, because Carl asked me prior to my taking that job. Actually, I was working in the studio with him, and he wanted me to go to Holland with him, and they were doing that record, and where Sail on Sailor was released, the
yeah,
Holland record, and I couldn't. I was on the road with Rick or somebody at the time. I couldn't do it. Later on, I was able to do it, and they kept asking me, and so I did it. But I didn't really know how to play that kind of a surf music. It had that surf vibe, right?
yeah, sure, yeah,
And like I said, that wasn't one of the three beats I knew. So I got there. Ricky Fattar was playing drums. I said, why do you want, and they said, well, Ricky plays all these other instruments and we would like you to play, and then he can get out and play steel or guitar, bass, so he did everything, Ricky Guitar.
Yeah. Great
So
drummer. Yeah.
I called him up because I was nervous about getting, cutting it. And they had already hired me. So, oh my God. I showed up at rehearsal and Ricky was set up. I said, Rick, would you mind like playing along with me? I could copy you. I said, I admit it's not my cup of tea. It would be really helpful. He said, of course. He's such a great guy.
Yeah.
So he set up and we started playing all those songs. And I just copied him. I copied him, tried to stay in where he was, played the same, everything. And it sounded great. But I had been playing with two drummers for a long time. Dennis Kenmore was the first guy in a band called Pollution with Tata Vega and Dobie Gray. Anyway, so I'm following Ricky and it sounded good. And Carl was like, and the band liked it. So I actually talked. Ricky said, yeah. I said, let's do this for the show, two guys. And Ricky said, sure, And then we went to Carl with it and said, it sounds so good. Why don't we use two drummers on the tours? And he said, okay, let's try. And so we did. So once again, I sucked at that music, but Ricky, because of I got it, and it was really great. And we had, and people were going, wow, man, some New York journalist wrote, oh yeah, this guy Eddie thought of this two drummer thing. James Brown thought about that.
Yeah. I'll bet with you and Ricky, it probably sounded unbelievable.
It was
the
great.
way you both play,
And we changed some of the stuff a little bit. Help Me Rhonda, we'd start just drums. And I played this funk that boom, 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 instead of boom, boom, boom. Right?
Yeah.
And then Ricky played that. And so in the big stadiums where you could just hear the drums, oh my God.
Yeah, I'll bet it was awesome.
It was just powerful. And so that was fun. That was really fun. They were really nice people, all of them. I had a great time.
What an honor to play in that band, to be part of that legacy,
I mean, even to this day, I work in Ecuador a lot now with trap. For 12 years, I've been working there. I love it. I consider most of the people there family. It's so powerful for me. One time we were getting off the plane and we went through customs and we're walking up the aisle to leave the airport. And there's all these cameras and lights and and we're all looking around. Who's this? There must be a celebrity on the plane. And it was me. Not for nothing, but rap program it does very well there. Not like it way better than it does here. They get that it's pedagogical and not a drum circle, right? So and all qualified teachers. So I said, what do you want with me? And they said, well, you're a beach boy. I said,
oh, that's so great.
Okay. So this is their equivalent of 60 Minutes. It's a big show. And I had a big segment and the interviews. I tried to play it down a little bit, but they weren't having it.
It's something you would do, but that's so cool.
I'm proud of that I had done that. But it's one of those things that's a sideman gig.
Yeah.
You do. I think I did 3 or 4 tours, short ones, maybe 4, 5, 6 months. And I remember a friend of mine who loved the Beach Boys that I grew up with. Somehow, after I left the band, the next time they were touring, whenever that was, my friend got backstage and he approached Al Jardine and he said, Al, I know Eddie Tuduri. I just finished this. And Al Jardine went, I'm sorry, Eddie, who? So there you you have it.
Yeah, but I'm sure he knew you as Eddie the drummer.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, but but
I
you're
mean, that
real.
happens.
Yeah.
That
That
happens. I mean, we work for people we think we're best friends. I worked with Jimmy Messina for a long time. Jimmy and I really hit it off because we were exactly the same age and have been through all this stuff and history together, but not together, but in the same place, but we never really played together.
yeah.
And I heard he called me up. Mike Clark had the gig, and at the last minute he had to leave. So he called me up. He said, "Listen, I told Messina he doesn't have to audition. You could just walk it. You'll do the gig. So he doesn't have to go through all the shit." He felt bad about bailing at the last minute.
Yeah.
So I showed up. I got the gig. Long story short, I got the gig. And so Jimmy and I, probably a year and a half or so. And I know Jack didn't talk about working with. I told Jimmy about Jack.
Oh, that's
Actually,
cool.
yeah. But we did a record there together, and Jimmy is the one that talked me into moving back to California.
Wow. Yeah.
But that was a gig that there were some gigs that I was really happy with, that I really felt great about, and that was one of them. Jimmy's a great guitar player, producer, engineer, arranger, all of the above.
Yeah.
You can be a little cranky once in a while, so can I.
Yeah. Me too.
But
Me too.
the point is, after I played with him all that time, when I broke my neck, he showed up at the hospital one day, and then I didn't see him or hear from him for 20 years.
Wow.
And then he calls me up, like last year, he calls up, "Hey, Eddie, man, you remember that drum set you gave me? I need a part for it. And I wondered, where do I?" Like nothing, no time had transpired.
Yeah.
And I was completely fine with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was okay. And what I'm saying is, you work with people and then you don't see them and they're on to them. I haven't talked to Mike McDonald, but we worked together for 5 years. He doing benefits. Mike's great, and he lives up the street.
Mm.
He and his family have had a lot of Tuduri meatballs. Trust me. After a while, that's my calling card. When Vinny I live across the street from the Bowl. When Sting played there,
Yeah.
I couldn't get a ticket. Right? They couldn't give me a ticket. But so I go. Usually, when friends are there, I walk across the street. It's right there. So I made a giant pot of sauce and meatballs, and I took this all up. I drove up the hill, and we all ate like pigs. Sting, the whole band, everybody, the band, the vocalists, the crew, everybody had meatballs. And then I took my pots and pans and I went home. I didn't even see the show.
I heard this story. I think Vinny told me this story, actually. Yeah. Oh my God. That's so you. That is so you. Oh my God.
Anyway, yeah, that's it. So you work for people and then you don't see them, or if you run into them, it's it's that sideman persona that we move from job to job to job, and sometimes we don't maintain any sort of relationship with the boss.
Yeah.
Or the band. Usually I still talk to guys I played with in various bands. Obviously Rick Nelson's band, Jay White and Dennis Sorokin, we've been friends all these years. That was from 1974 and 5.
Wow.
Kept in touch. We did a Stone band reunion in Chicago about 5 years ago. Just the three of us. It was fantastic. So, yeah, but the stars, not so much. Mike, after all this, I haven't talked to Mike in 2 years.
Wow.
I talk to his wife all the time. They live up the street.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
The pandemic and all that.
And he's had a busy, roughly a year or so. with the Doobies, being back with the Doobie brothers. So he's been cut him a little slack, Eddie. He's been busy.
COVID twice.
Oh yeah, 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 and that too. Yep, yep.
Listen, Mike McDonald is the nicest, most accommodating. Was when I got hurt, he was here.
Mm.
Whenever I needed anything, he was on the phone. He's not. The last show we did together, we were all in the living room. I was all bandaged up from the cancer operation. And they came over to make fun of me, I think, And Amy had just broke her leg or her ankle, and she was sitting next to me, and we're talking. And Mike, every time he would complain, "Do I have to be, I have to be in front? Can't I just be the piano player? I was sing a couple of songs. I just want to be in the band." I said, No, you can't just be the piano player. Are you kidding?
No, you're Michael McDonald.
Yeah, you can. I'm sorry, pal, but we won't sell any tickets. So he says, "Well, and he was serious." So Amy and I had just gotten out of the hospital. I had this wristband on that said "fall risk," and Amy had just been on. She had the same armband on, and her arms were on the couch. She like this. And just when that happened, I looked at those two wristbands. I said, "I'll tell you what we're going to do, Mike. We're going to say Michael McDonald featuring the band Fall Risk." Everybody cracked up, but I did all the promotion like that. And you can imagine all my friends are therapists and nurses. Yeah. So I asked Jan Ingram, my dear friend. She and her husband live down the street. They're the sweetest people in the world. I said, man, "Can you get me some wristbands?" She said, "How many?" I said, "A couple of hundred." So she showed up a few days later with a couple of hundred wristbands, and everybody at the show got them. All the band wore them, and
Oh, that's great.
So
I got one Mike McDonald story, if you'll permit me. I was coming home from Nashville. I've been down in Nashville for a bit. I was still working for Zildjian, so maybe 10 years ago. And I'm in the Admiral's Lounge at the airport, Nashville airport. And I see Michael McDonald come in. And I happen to be on the phone with Harry McCarthy. And I'd seen Harry the night before. We'd had dinner. So, Harry's like saying, "Have a great trip," whatever. And I'm on the phone with Harry. I go, "Harry, Michael McDonald just walked in." And Michael McDonald like looks my way and smiles at me, gives me this big smile because he knew I knew who he was, and he's kind of like, he looked really approachable. And I said, and Harry says, "Oh, tell him I said hi." And I went, "Yeah, okay, sure, yeah." And he said, "No, seriously, I know him. Tell him I said hi." So I hold my phone and I go, "Harry McCarthy says hi," and he goes, "Oh, you know Harry?" And he comes over and it was like he was the nicest guy.
No pretension.
Yeah, nicest guy.
I mean, and I write about that in the book too. With I wrote about all those people in the resume, everybody, because I don't usually talk about that. I took notes all those years. When I got to Michael McDonald, it was a different story, different than anybody. He's just so kind. He's the kind of guy you would like to be friends with.
Yeah, he seems it.
If he was a plumber, you would still want to be his best friend. He's just so kind.
Yeah.
He helps everybody. He doesn't say no. That's a problem. He doesn't say no to here in town. He'll do concerts every week for free for one concern or another. I don't know how he does it. And then he'll fly in from another country, just show up in time for the gig, and boom. I mean, he's an amazing guy. And his wife, Amy, sweeter than him even. She's the best. And I knew her from Josephina's.
That was a great spot, Josephina's, man.
Lothar and Bob and all those, Chris, they're still with us. We're still all playing together. Amy, I'm in touch with Amy more than Mike even. He's pretty busy.
Well, Eddie, can you talk about trap and I maybe
Yeah, sorry.
No, 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 it's okay. And I feel funny even asking you to talk about the circumstances that led to
Oh no, I
starting
don't.
that. But
I thank God for my broken neck.
well,
I do.
you're a stronger man than me.
Well, I'll tell you briefly. I'm a body surfer, and I was very physical before I broke my neck. I was in Taekwondo 5 days a week, and I'm not saying I was any good at it, but I was very active in it and very in shape, and surfing every day, body surfing.
Yeah.
I hit a bad wave. The wave was during El Nino time, and the waves and the current was especially tough. And I jumped in a wave and just went bam. It pounded me into the bottom, and I heard a big snap and then nothing. And I was all alone. I was 20 yards out by myself, totally paralyzed, 3 feet underwater, all alone. And I saw a beautiful energy. It's very difficult to explain. I've heard other people try to explain their near-death experiences. This wasn't like a light at the end of the tunnel, but it was a tremendous energy and a completely enticing, loving, beautiful. It was like being in God's hot tub. It was just wonderful. I knew that my body was floating this way and my spirit the other way. And I knew I had to discard my body to go on, to continue on this journey. There's no way I wanted to come back. And so I said, well, I'll have to open my mouth, let the water in, and I'll discard the body, and then I can get on my way. And so I opened my mouth wide to let the water in, and I was lifted from the bottom and got a mouthful of air. And then I was placed gently at the shore where the lifeguard with the most seniority on the Central Coast came by. And he said, are you all right? I said, no, I'm totally paralyzed. And jovial about it because of what I've just experienced. So he put surfboards up around me so the waves wouldn't drown me. And then the lifeguard, that was the lifeguard, then the paramedic with the most seniority showed up. They put me on, and that's where quadriplegics have that's where the worst harm can come to them when they're being transported. This guy was really very good. He put me into the ambulance and took me to the hospital, where they rolled me into the number one neurosurgeon on the Central Coast. Happened to be there on a Saturday, Dr. Scott Conley. He said, I'll take this guy. So he took me in. They did an MRI, and he showed me what was happening. My sixth vertebra was totally herniated and pushing against the spinal cord. So he said, this is what happened. This is how it looks. He says, and your spinal cord is bruised. I said, great. So a couple of weeks, it'll be fine, right? And he said, no, not your spinal cord doesn't heal from that. I said, so what do you need to do? He said, well, I have to put your neck back together and fuse it, all that. And I said, so when are we going to do that? Like in a couple of weeks? When are you going to do that? I remember this. And he said, no, Eddie, we have to do it right now. I was joking and laughing. And I had such a great experience underwater that day that nothing bothered me, nothing at all. So he did the operation. 6.5 hours later, I wake up in the ICU, and I wake up and I'm just ahead, right? Nothing else. Nothing. And I saw angels everywhere. And then there were nurses, and there were kind of angels following them around. It was just what I saw.
Yeah.
And that's the way it was. No one can tell me different.
Yeah.
Right. And so then I went, I better take inventory. And I said, well, I can talk. I can wiggle my ears. I can blink my eyes. So I can work with that. I was already thinking about how can I be purposeful if I'm just ahead? So, and laughing. So this doctor comes in who happens to be my surgeon's partner. His name's Jones. And he's one of the best surgeons in the world, but he's got a very bad bedside manner. Everybody knows it. I didn't. He came and he said, "Oh, I'm Dr. Jones. I'm your surgeon's partner." And he said, "How you doing?" I said, "I'm fine." I said, "I'll be walking out of here in a couple of weeks." And he says, "Who told you you'd walk again?" And I looked up at him, and I can't say that I actually said that, but I at least mouthed it, "Fuck you." And he said, "Well, I should never, just fuck off."
Yeah.
And he walked away. Next time I saw him, I walked in his office.
Oh, man.
Right, 6 weeks later.
Yeah.
So what happened was, when I got to the hospital, after a little while, my right hand came back and I could wiggle my toe. I knew I was going to be all right. Everybody else didn't. They were sending psychiatrists in. I said, "I'm really going to be all right. I really appreciate what you're trying to do, but this is just a process. I'll be with you in a minute. I'm going to be fine." And 2 weeks later, she was sending her patients to me. At any rate, I started moving around just a little bit, and I asked my friend Greg Leroy to bring me some sticks and shakers and stuff. So he brought me some drumsticks, and the railing on the side of the bed, I was going. So yeah, I still got it. I'm just a hand and a head, but I still got it. I got it.
Yeah.
So the guy who was the aide in the room, Oscar, I said, "Oscar, can you go on my food tray?" So he does, "Yeah, I could do that." So I'm doing. So a little old lady rolls in from the other side of the ward, Edith. She's 80 something. She's had spinal cord injury. "I want to play, Eddie. I want to play." I said, "Okay, Edith." And we had a cowbell. This is when I learned never bring a cowbell to the hospital. But we had a cowbell. We put the cowbell. I said, "Edith, just play ands 1 and 2 and." She couldn't quite get it. Ted, the guy next to me in the bed, I look like Superman compared to him. He had pancreatic cancer. He had a stroke. He broke every bone in his body and was pinned back together. He had blood clots. And he was death eating a cracker. He was but the strongest, most macho guy ever. So I can play that part. I can do it. So I said, "Oscar, he says, "I don't know, Eddie." I said, "Just put the cowbell on his chest and give him a stick." He played it perfectly. And 2. And so it had 1 and 2 and then 3.
Yeah.
And then Edith says, "But Eddie, I still want to play." I said, "All right, Edith, just do that." This is, let me clarify, this isn't a drum circle, it's an ensemble. And it's intricate enough that you would never expect these 4 incapacitated people to even approach it.
Yeah.
The doctors, the nurses were dancing. I thought they were going to throw me out. Anyway, I started telling all my merchant friends, of which I have many, like you.
Yes.
And I said, "I need some bongos and shakers and cabasas and all." Well, everybody in the business sent stuff. John Good sent one morning. They took me in my wheelchair. We said, "We got to show you something." They took me down to the day room, and John had brought a beautiful drum set. It was in the middle of
Oh,
and everybody else was sending. They said, "Eddie, please tell your friends to stop. We have nowhere to put this stuff." They still 25 years later. Anyway, we moved into the mat room. We had all these people with different disabilities, all the different disciplines, the nurses and therapists were using it for range of motion, for focus, memory, attention, balance, everything. We were using these things, and we just started, doing things with all these people. And I was making notes. I was in a wheelchair then. by then. Left side was out, but I had my right foot, my right hand. So Greg brought my drums in. We set the drums in, and I could play boom, boom. And it was cool. I could
Yeah.
play a pocket, right?
Yeah.
And gosh, I mean, the first day I woke up in the rehab after they shipped me from the ICU, I was kind of coming out of the anesthesia and everything in the rehab. I woke up and there was Vinny and Robin Flynn at the end of my bed. I know we were going to talk about this. I don't want to interject in the middle of this story, but we were talking about what we feel about people and how I was writing this book and in the chapter about influences. When we got to Vinny, I said, Vinny's influenced every drummer who ever existed in this time. And I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about his kindness, how kind he is and how he showed up.
Yeah.
And how deeply emotional and truthful he is about friendship and the love of your friends and family. That's how he's influenced me. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, other than that, I taught him the other stuff.
No,
actually, he's been playing with me all these years, and he only plays the pocket. He says, I love playing with you. I just have to play the pocket and nothing else. We played last year, and we were doing a second line thing. And he was playing exactly what I was playing. You know, I said,
wow.
He goes, what? I said, play something. He played this film, was like from outer space. Everybody was, what the hell was that? And he went, okay. You know?
You wanted it. No, but but you're so right. And I'm so glad you said that, Eddie, because I think, it's easy to fixate on Vinny's genius as a player. I mean, it's out there for the whole world to see and to know. For going back 40 something years, you can trace back to Vinny's incredible legacy as a drummer. But those of us that know him well, and you certainly do, and I think I do too. He's just such an unbelievable human being, friend, loyal to the bone. I mean, he's like, and Robin Flans too, as you said. Robin is just,
she's terrific.
She's unbelievable.
So anyway, we have this thing going in the hospital, and the therapist started taking a real interest in it. Libby Whaley, who was the director at the time, had it approved, and they were starting to use this. They called it rhythm therapy, and they used it in the hospital. They're still doing it probably. At any rate, Libby and I showed it to a conference in Northern California. I took Wilfredo Sr. and Carl Perazzo with me. And these were all therapists. They didn't know who those guys were, and or anything. Yeah. We all played. They played. I played. Tried to stay out of the way, and everybody loved it. Everybody loved it. And this little girl, a therapist, approached me. She said, "Have you ever worked in the field of developmental disabilities?" I said, "No. I obviously am aware of it, but She said, "Would you come to Pasadena? We have classes. There's 26 children with a plethora of diagnoses." I didn't know one from the other. I said, "Sure, I'll come." Pretty much everything I've done since the moment my neck snapped had something to do with trap and the divine guidance. That's the way it is.
Yeah.
I'm not a preacher. I'm just following the bouncing ball where it leads me. So I go to Pasadena, and I bring a couple of drums. That's all I had, some shakers. And we're in the room, and there's like 7 kids, and some of them are in wheelchairs, others are in chairs. We have an egg shaker, and she was saying, "Okay, take the shaker, put it on the ground, put your hands on your lap." Some of them knew what their lap was, some of them didn't. Mm-hmm. So this is a learning process. Pick up the egg shaker, shake it over your head, put it back on the ground, pick it up, touch your elbow. So there was kinesthetic awareness and, following directions and listening and participating in a group therapy for these kids.
Great.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
So next to me was this kid, Charlie, who had Down syndrome, and he was in a wheelchair. And I remember distinctly the moment I looked down and he looked up at me and smiled. I said, oh, thank you, God. I get it. I'm all in. That was the moment. I'm all in. And I've never changed. And then along came Dion. Dion was part of that class, who's the face of trap all these years. He's in his 40s now. I mean, it's been the most wonderful journey of my life and the lives of those who surround me, because it rubs off.
Yeah.
I have, the videos, even the hardest people I know will look at that and think, Eddie, this is really wonderful. It's so moving, And Greg Sutton, who's a good friend of mine, writer and player. Greg's kind of a New York guy he's got kind of an attitude. That's why we get along so well, right? He called me up one day, and he's not a mushy kind of guy. And he said, Eddie, I've been watching your videos. I'm really moved. Really? I said, Greg, it's like rubbing shoulders with angels every day.
Yeah.
He, the writer in him, says, finish those lyrics and call me back. And he hung up. And now we have a new theme song called Rubbing Shoulders with Angels. I'll send it to you.
Please, yes.
It's really says it all, So I stayed at that place teaching for 6 years. I found a place closer to home. I was in Carpinteria at the time. I went to Ojai for 6 years, and I worked with great therapists, and then I also volunteered at the hospital twice a week for 3 years. So I was surrounded by people with that kind of energy and expertise. Even though it wasn't about what I was doing, it was significant in the realm of what we all accomplished together. Yeah. So we're talking about laterality and temporal organization and proprioceptiveness and all these things that I had no idea. We started writing. I started writing the methodology. I used what I knew. I used quarter notes, and things like identifying colors.
Yeah.
Once they understood what a quarter note was, and that first time I wrote, people who have Down syndrome or other conditions, they don't necessarily know how to count because they don't grasp conventional scholastics. So I wrote, in the very beginning, I drew a quarter note on the blackboard. I said, who likes rock and roll? Everybody did. It warmed my heart to see that.
Yeah.
I said, okay. I said, here's how I learned how to count. And I said, this is a quarter note. It's worth one beat, Then they all did that. Then I got a djembe, and I said, let's play that. And I went, 1, visual. Don't look at the drum as the drum, but the tactile component of the learning curve. You feel it. It's a drum, so you hear it and combine it with speech. It's a multi-sensory approach to learning. Mm-hmm. So then it went from this one quarter note. I said, well, let's play that for me. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then that went, there's 100 pages of really abstract stuff. Accents, colors, shapes, sign language, and then they learn right from left, which is really important. Right, left, right, left, right, left, left, right, left, 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 right. All linear in the beginning. So I used the skills I had as a drummer but in an entirely different way. It had nothing to do with drumming, you know.
Wow.
And we didn't do, and there was not I don't even know how to do a drum circle. Most of us who've been players all our lives don't. I think they're great. I've been to drum circles, they're like really powerful. But to compare, now this has been peer studied, by PhDs and doctors. It's been published in the journals of special education. So it's not a drum circle or anything. It's really not that, so when people ask me, can I join your drum circle? I say, yeah, do you have a drum? They say, yeah. I say, okay, ready? Or what's the other one? Yeah, there's two drum circle beats. That's how much I know. And they're great. They're powerful. They're fun. I encourage all my kids and adults to go down the beach. Don't smoke a joint. Just go down there and play and have fun.
It's so beautiful, Eddie. It's man. I just want to read you what Bob Sidlowski said.
Bob.
Yeah, Bob's watching. Yeah, our old friend Bob Sidlowski, and he said that's precisely why you were saved, Eddie. I agree with him.
When I looked at that kid's face, and I say this over and over again, when I look into the eyes of a child with Down syndrome, it's God looking back at me directly.
Yeah.
Through this child. So I have no doubt about that. I don't mind telling you or anybody else how I feel or where it came from. It is. Absolutely. And Bob, you're right. I felt that. I still know it. I mean, I had cancer a few years ago. They weren't sure if I would make it. And I had a sat on the end of my bed while we were waiting for the PET scan. And I said to God, as I understand God, I said, let's go now. I'm ready. Right now, I said, I've had 20 something years at the time, 22 years. It's been the best life. Anybody, thank you so much. I'm not sure I'm finished with the assignment yet. Seriously, but I if you want, we can go right this minute. I'm ready. And I felt I really meant it.
Yeah.
And so nothing, I'm still here.
You sure are.
The next day, I got a phone call from the hospital. So it looks like it hasn't gone anywhere else in your body. It hasn't metastasized. So you're probably going to be okay. I mean, it's not going to be easy, but we have, we can save you. I said, okay, and that wasn't my choice per se. I was ready to go. And then, but believe me, I'm very happy to be here for however long I am. And the program's just, I have 7 new facilities with hundreds of people just these past few weeks, hundreds of people that we're touching their lives every day. Not to mention all the people that are facilitating all over the world now. I can't believe it. We have great programs in Damascus, in Thailand, in Spain, South America, all the way to Australia.
Incredible.
Andrew came up here and learned the program. I don't know if he's facilitating right now, but I know he uses it in his drum classes. So I never ask anybody to do it exactly, precisely this way or that. Just make it part of your life. Make it part of your curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm teaching people with autism to teach other people with autism the TRAP program, and teaching people with Down syndrome to teach other people with neurodiverse conditions. It's a blessing every day, every single day. So
your work is not done, Eddie. Nope.
I'm going to hang around a little bit more.
Yeah, good. And speaking of Jack Bruno, the man of the hour, besides yourself, Jack said, "Love you, Eddie. Making Eddie T, making the world a better place." Where Yep. Better than playing drums, better than your meatballs. Well, maybe not meatballs.
Wait a minute.
No, he said, well, maybe not better than your
Oh,
meatballs, but it's close.
yesterday, Jack, you'll like this. The yesterday in your notes or whatever, somebody said, you said, Eddie, this, and so much more. And the guy said, does so much more mean your recipe for meatballs?
Yes.
Right? So you don't see what I wrote back, because I wrote back, I'd be happy to do that, but then I'd have to kill you. And Facebook blocked me.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Yesterday because of that. Then they said, I said, they gave you some choices, though. Do and I said, you took this totally out of context.
Yeah. And yet well, I won't even get started because they'll probably shut down this show right now. But the amount of shit they let out there, and I've had the same kind of thing happen where I've said something, and then I've seen it blocked or changed, and it's like, are you kidding me?
Such a common thing, especially with Italians. Can
Yeah.
you show me how to do that? Well, I could show you, but then I'd have to kill you.
Yeah, exactly. It's a classic. And Anthony is the guy that said it. I remember reading it actually. Anthony Casina, who is saying that was me, Eddie.
Okay.
So he was a paisan like us.
That's what I said. I know they didn't let him see that yesterday. But I replied.
Oh man,
they blocked me. That was great.
Man. Well, we're about ready to wrap it up. We've the time goes by quick when you're having fun and laughing for an hour plus. So, but so for folks watching, they can find more about this. There's a website for Trap, right? Or go to your
Trap Learning. One word, traplearning.org.
Yeah.
That's simple.
And I'll share it on this too. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Great. And Eddie, I know there's so much more, and we'll another time we'll cover more of all the stuff that you have done and continue to do. But this has been so much fun today, and I want to thank you for almost 40 years of being a great friend and an inspiration. You've always been an inspiration, and when I saw you, when all that happened 25 years ago, and I saw you come back from it, it was just, and you've always been this positive as long as I've known you, and I love you, brother. Just
I love you too, man. I'm so grateful that you would have me on your show. I'm telling you, I watch it, and I get excited to see Jim and Jack and everybody that you have on your show. It's so to be in that on your team, so to speak. Wow. It was a real honor for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Eddie.
Okay.
All right. Merry Christmas, buddy.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, and hang with me for 1 second. We'll end the stream. I want to thank everybody for watching. Giant hand for Eddie Tuduri, all of our hero, inspiration. And stay tuned, everybody. We'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.